Our first segment on the dispositional causes of delinquency is going to focus on the biological causes of delinquency. One of the first things to note is that biological causes of delinquency are some of the earliest proposed in the social sciences, and it's not because of the advanced notion or the advanced science of biology in comparison to sociology or psychology. It's a reason that you would not necessarily expect. In fact, it stems all the way back to the notion of the period of colonialism in which we see global expansion of European interests throughout the world. European expeditions went to places like Africa, India, Asia, and the Americas, and not only uncovered vast natural resources to enrich the motherlands that sent them, they also uncovered numerous cultures and civilizations that these early explorers really took note of, and in fact many got famous from their writings and journalings of these far-off lands. What we found is that these early writings kind of led to the development of what's known as biological determinism. Biological determinism is really the fact that biological traits are linked to behavioral outcomes in the individual. So early explorers noted the outward biological appearance of the native people in places like India and Asia and Africa and the Americas, and linked them to what they felt were inferior cultural traits. So these early explorers and their writings and their kind of ethnocentric belief systems led to separate what was known as civilization from the world of savagery, the world of civilization from the world of savagery. And in fact, we saw pseudosciences kind of crop up in the form of phrenology and chronology that kind of either linked biologically people with the ability to be civilized or the biological propensity to be savage. This idea was pervasive throughout the sciences and even made its way into the early study of criminology. In fact, one of the founders of the field of criminology, an Italian army physician by the name of Caesar Lombroso, used this notion of biological determinism to come up with what he felt was characteristics that would define the criminal man. So Lombroso compared the physical characteristics of Italian soldiers with Italian criminals and found that criminals had very different physical features in comparison to what would be considered the height of civilization, the soldier. So he measured things like body, arms, head, skin, jawbones, and the hands of criminals and soldiers, and found that prisoners were more likely to have things like asymmetry of the face, large monkey-like ears, larger lips, a receding chin, twisted nose, excessive cheekbones, longer arms, and excessive skin wrinkles, or extra fingers or toes, and concluded that, in fact, criminals were really biologically different than the Italian soldier. And this linked to their evolutionary status, that criminals were, in fact, throwbacks to an earlier period of history where savagery existed. So, these criminals were linked to, savagery. They were linked to savagery, whereas the Italian soldier was representative of the advanced civilized man. The advanced civilized man. Over here on the right-hand side of your page, you see some examples of what Lombroso meant by the criminal man: larger ears, large monkey-like lips, the excessive wrinkles on the skin, etc. And what he said was that 5 or more of these characteristics could actually mark a person as being a born criminal. So in order to be an investigator or a person who was concerned with criminality, rather than looking for people committing criminal acts, you could simply focus on the different features of people, and that was the way that you could determine if they were a criminal or not. Interestingly, females only needed 3 of these characteristics, and Lombroso estimated that born criminals in the Italian population represented about 35% of males and 14% of females. Biological determinism was pervasive all the way through the middle of the 20th century, but fell out of favor after the event of World War II and the use of biological determinism to exterminate 6 million European Jews. However, we still have sociologists and psychologists and biologists that focus on biological theories for deviant behavior, which includes, linking it to physical anomalies, body chemistry, composition, or hereditary or genetic characteristics. Claims have been made by biologists and psychologists and sociologists that crime is influenced through things like genetically inherited traits, differences in hormones, biological hormones, body types, neuropsychological brain factors, chemistry and composition of body tissues, and a variety of other physical dimensions, and can be predictive of things like alcoholism, propensity to commit crime, propensity to become addicted to different types of illicit substances, the development of different mental disorders, and even sexual deviations. But today's biologists and sociologists and psychologists that use the biological perspective are far more cautious when they make these types of predictions. So first thing that we're cautious about when we try to link biology with behavior is that biology really cannot determine deviant behaviors, because deviant behaviors are a product of culture and social norms. So there isn't necessarily a deviance gene that we're born with. Biology can only play a factor in terms of transmission of propensities. So things like sensational sensitivity, so sensitivity to light, to sound, to touch, metabolism, whether or not it takes a lot of energy or a lot of effort to burn off excesses in energy, or little effort to burn off excesses of energy in a person, and then biological stigmas that come into play when deviant behavior is involved. But, both biologists, sociologists, and also psychologists are really cautious when making these types of statements. So the nature of deviant behavior is varied as well and historically situated. So sometimes different types of propensities like sensitivities or differences in metabolism may be more useful for conforming behavior, and at other times in other periods in history, sensitivities and differences in metabolism, or even what is considered stigmas, may be lead to a greater propensity to commit deviant behavior. So in general, when we think about empirical results that link biology directly to deviant behavior, we note that there is really limited or negligible predictive value, meaning it's not worth much. But there are things within biology that can give us insight to deviant behavior as it exists currently in the current historical and situational context that we experience as members of society. And with that, we'll continue our discussion on the dispositional causes of delinquency in the next segment.